My family stuck me in the worst room on our vacation. They had no idea I actually owned the hotel. I decided to just sit back and watch as the annual family reunion unfolded. This tradition was something my mom was determined to keep alive. For me, though, it was just another weekend filled with endless comparisons and snarky remarks. This year's gathering didn't promise to be any different, except for the fact that the fancy hotel we'd be staying at had recently become mine, courtesy of a secret inheritance from my grandfather 6 months earlier. As I walked into the lobby of Hotel Miramar, my heart raced. My sister Lucia, the golden child of the family, was greeted warmly with hugs and smiles. Nobody seemed to notice I was there until my mother spotted me and frowned. "I didn't think you'd show up, Carmen," she said, her disappointment blunt and clear. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Lucia's husband, Roberto, gave me the usual up-and-down look, assessing my outfit. "Looks like the graphic design gig isn't paying much, huh?" he teased, grinning. Little did they know, my small design business had grown into a respected international agency, but I never bothered to correct them. The hardest part was keeping the secret that this lush hotel, with its stunning gardens and ocean views, was now mine. Grandpa had always seen potential in me that the rest of the family never did. As we sorted out accommodations, my mom took charge, and the hotel manager, Miguel, handed out the keys. Lucia and her husband were given the presidential suite with an ocean view, my parents an executive suite, my cousins got deluxe rooms, and I got, wait for it, room 108 on the first floor, right next to the laundry room. It was the smallest and noisiest room in the place. Everyone exchanged glances, some embarrassed, others amutas, said. Miguel, clearly uncomfortable, tried to offer a different room for me. "It's all right, Miguel," I said firmly. "Room 108 will be just fine." Catching their judgmental stares as I walked to the elevator, I overheard my cousin Daniela sneer, "Carmen always takes the leftovers." The room was as I'd remembered, tiny, with a window overlooking the service area and the constant hum of laundry machines. Sitting on the bed, I took a deep breath. I wasn't here to confront anyone or expose the truth about owning the place. I just wanted to understand why my family still saw me as the odd one out after all these years. That evening, at the welcome dinner, my family sat at the best table. My chair was tucked behind a column, half hidden. While they ordered lavishly, I chose a simple salad. "Can't you afford anything more, Carmen?" my dad asked, with a half-mocking tone. "We can cover you if needed." "The salad is perfect, thank you," I replied, keeping my composure. The conversation revolved around Lucia's latest accomplishments, her promotion, her new fancy house. "Our Lucia always knew what she wanted," my mom said proudly. "Not like Carmen, who wasted her time with that drawing nonsense." The head chef came over to our table, giving me a respectful nod. "Enjoy your salad, Miss Carmen?" he inquired. "Delicious, Antonio, thank you," I replied, as my family looked at me, puzzled. "You know the chef?" Lucia asked, surprised. "We've crossed paths," I said vaguely. Truthfully, I'd hired Antonio myself 3 months ago, after Grandpa left me the hotel. As the evening wore on, fueled by wine, the jabs aimed at me became sharper. The weight of the secret grew heavier. Should I reveal the truth? What would they think if they knew that every slight, every humiliation happened in my own hotel? Miguel discreetly approached me during dinner. "Miss Carmen, there's an urgent matter," he whispered. "What's so urgent for Carmen?" Roberto quipped. "Did they run out of colored pencils?" Ignoring him, I excused myself. In the hotel office, Miguel voiced his concern. "Miss, it's hard to watch how they treat you. You're the owner of this place." "I know, Miguel, but I need to figure something out first," I said. "There's an old family wound I need to understand." Staring out at the dark sea, I felt I was close to discovering why my family resented me so much. Back at the table, amidst tales of new sports cars, Aunt Elena asked, "What did that employee want, Carmen? Do you know him?" "Just a mix-up with the reservation," I lied, sipping my water. "Typical Carmen," Lucia muttered to Roberto, loud enough for me to hear, "always causing trouble." Later, as everyone retreated to their extravagant rooms, I lingered in the empty lobby. Miguel brought me a tea. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said. "Don Ernesto always knew you were the one to carry on his legacy." I smiled wistfully. Grandpa was the only one who saw something special in me. Sometimes I wonder if he wasn't mistaken. Miguel shook his head. You've done more for this place in months than anyone else could. The staff respects you. He wasn't wrong. At breakfast the next day, several staff members greeted me with a subtle respect that went unnoticed by my family, too busy with the lavish buffet. Carmen, is that all you're eating? My mom questioned, eyeing my plate. No wonder you're so thin, you look unwell. I'm perfectly healthy, I assured her. Just prefer a light start. Roberto laughed. Light or just cheap? Bet you're counting every penny. The table erupted in laughter. I sighed, focusing on my saped. Late. It wasn't the time for big reveals. The morning passed with activities, a hotel tour, pool time, and spa treatments. Naturally, my parents made sure Lucia and her husband got the VIP treatment. For me, only the basics. Sorry, but it seems the premium massage is booked, my mom said, feigning disappointment. I'd later find out she canceled my reservation, saying a premium service would be wasted on me. Over lunch, the topic of Grandpa Ernesto's inheritance arose. I'll never understand why Dad sold the hotel before he passed, my mom mused. It was his pride and joy. He must have gotten an offer he couldn't refuse, my father speculated. Too bad we never knew who bought it, Lucia sighed dramatically. If it were still ours, Carmen could have at least had a decent room, she added, as if doing me a favor. I just smirked to myself, pondering the truth about the inheritance and the family secret I was close to unraveling. After a delightful yacht tour, I found myself slipping into what was once my grandfather's old office, a space now transformed into my own private sanctuary. Miguel, our trusted family assistant, was already there, waiting with a box brimming with documents. I found what you asked for, Miss Carmen, he said, placing the box gently on the table. Curiosity piqued, I began sifting through my grandfather's personal papers, all of which were deeply tied to our family history. Letters, photographs, and diaries were strewn across the desk. Among the assortment, my hands landed on a yellowed envelope dated 15 years ago. Inside was a letter from my mother to my grandfather, and it took my breath away. Dad, you have to understand that Carmen isn't like us. She never was. If you keep treating her as your favorite, you'll only hurt her. She doesn't have what it takes to succeed in this family. The letter went on, suggesting that Lucia should be the one to inherit the family hotel one day. As I read on, my hands couldn't help but tremble. There were more letters, all echoing the same sentiment. Over the years, my own mother had tried to persuade my grandfather that I was undeserving of his attention and inheritance, pointing out my supposed shortcomings. Among the documents, I discovered a note my grandfather had written but never sent. Isabel, it saddens me to see how you treat your own daughter. Carmen has a spirit and intelligence that you can't even see. Someday all of you will realize the mistake you've made. The words were like a cold wave crashing over me. It was clear that my mother's actions were more than just typical family rivalry. It was a calculated attempt to oust me from the family's favor. Are you all right, miss? Miguel asked, noticing my silence. No, I admitted, but I will be. Diving back into the documents, I stumbled upon something even more shocking. My father and Roberto had attempted to coerce my grandfather into selling the hotel to them at a bargain price just before his death. Luckily, grandfather had been wise to their scheme and secretly decided to leave the hotel to me. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Daniela, my cousin. Carmen, what are you doing here? This area is restricted, she said, eyeing the documents sprawled out on the table. Miguel quickly chimed in, explaining that I was looking into the hotel's operations. Isn't it strange that they let you in here? Daniela questioned, her gaze sharp. Well, maybe I'm not as invisible as everyone thinks, I shot back, meeting her eyes. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her expression. You were always grandfather's favorite, she conceded, though no one would, as she demit it. After Daniela left, I knew my little secret wouldn't be kept under wraps for long. The family would soon begin to suspect, forcing me to decide whether to continue enduring their disdain or reveal that I, the oft-overlooked Carmen, was now the proprietor of the empire they all desired. That evening, the formal dinner provided the perfect storm to confront the brewing family tensions. The gala, central to our family reunion, was held in the hotel's grand hall, adorned with fresh flowers, candles, fine crystal, and linen tablecloths. I made a fashionably late entrance in a simple yet elegant black dress of my own design. "Finally, you show up," my mother snapped irritably. "We were about to start without you." I took my designated less than desirable seat at the table. Roberto was already tipsy, boasting loudly about his recent forays into real estate. "I bought 3 coastal properties last month," he bragged. "If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday." Lucia, his wife, beamed with pride. "My husband has business acumen," she declared, unlike certain family members who merely dabble in designing logos. My father raised a toast to Roberto and Lucia, proclaiming them the real pride of our family. While everyone else clinked glasses, I quietly left mine untouched. Throughout the first course, Daniela scrutinized me with curiosity, finally breaking the tension. "Carmen, I saw you today in the hotel's private office. You seemed quite at ease there." Her words cast a sudden hush over the room as all eyes turned to me. "What were you doing in restricted areas?" my father demanded, frowning. I casually took a sip of water, explaining that I was researching some hotel matters. "Why would you bother with that?" my mother scoffed. "It's not as if you're going to buy a hotel." Roberto erupted in laughter. "Carmen owning a hotel? That's a laugh. She can't even afford a decent room." It was then that Miguel approached with a bottle of exclusive champagne. "Miss Carmen, the champagne you requested for your family," he announced. My mother looked baffled. "We didn't order any," she noted. "It's on the house," I interjected calmly, adding, "from me." Lucia nearly choked. "How could you possibly afford a bottle that costs more than your rent?" Miguel poured the bubbly as the tension rose. "There's a lot you don't know about me," I said simply. My father, looking at me with suspicion, asked, "What do you mean, Carmen? If you have something to say, just say it." I weighed my options. I could reveal my secret now, delivering a blow that would humiliate them as they had me for years, serving revenge on a silver platter. But as I gazed around the table, something in me shifted. I didn't want to become like them. Instead, I opted for a kind gesture. "I just wanted to celebrate our being together as a family, despite everything," I explained. The surprise was evident in their faces. They hadn't expected generosity from me. As dinner continued, Daniela's gaze lingered on me, clearly reevaluating her perception of who I really was. During dessert, Lucia broached the subject of grandfather's inheritance. "I never understood why he sold the hotel in secret. It was the family legacy." I replied, "Maybe he knew some would try to take advantage." I looked pointedly at my father and Roberto. "What are you implying?" Roberto barked defensively. "Nothing," I replied coolly. "Just that grandfather was more astute than we gave him credit for." My father's expression shifted between suspicion and unease. "Carmen, if you know something about the hotel sale, you should share it with the family." "Now I'm part of the famas." "Iley," I questioned, recalling how just hours ago I was the relative deemed too poor for a decent room. An awkward silence descended as my mother attempted to steer the conversation away, but I pressed on. "You know, grandfather shared many things with me during the hours we spent together while you were all off living your important lives. He talked about his vision for the hotel, his hopes for his legacy." "How mysterious," Lucia practically purred, unable to mask her curiosity. "He told me a family business is like a mirror. It reflects the values of those who run it," I said, pausing for effect. "And that one must always beware of deceptive appearances." Roberto slammed his fist on the table. "Enough with the riddles. If there's something to say, then say it." At that moment, the hotel's general manager approached our table. "Excuse the interruption," he said. "I just wanted to check that everything was to your satisfaction, especially for you, Miss Carmen." My family shifted uncomfortably at the preferential treatment I was receiving. "Everything's perfect, Javier, thank you," I replied with a smile. "Why on earth do they treat you like you're someone special?" my father demanded. I took a deep breath. The secret I hadn't intended to reveal was bubbling to the surface. "Because they know my work," I explained. "They simply respect what I do." "Drawing logos?" Roberto scoffed. "I design corporate identities for international companies," I corrected him. "My agency has clients across 3 continents and 30 employees." At the last moment, I decided I wasn't quite ready to lay all my cards on the table, but that night, a seed of change had been planted. Last year, our revenue shot past the $3 million mark, and you should have seen the looks on their faces. Pure shock. My mom nearly dropped her glass. Lucia, my sister, blurted out, "You're lying," and added, "If you were doing so well, you'd have bragged about it already." I shot back, "Unlike some people, I don't need constant pats on the back to feel good about myself. There's a big difference between being humble and letting people walk all over you." My mom, still looking puzzled, asked, "If you're so successful, why did you stay in that crummy room?" I answered truthfully, "Because I wanted to see just how far you'd all take your disdain for me. I needed to know if there was any cap to how little you thought of me." My words hit the table like bricks, and for the first time, I noticed some of them showing signs of shame. Not everyone, but it was a start. My dad started to say something, "Carmen," but I cut him off. "I'm not done. For years, I've endured your snide comments, your condescending looks, your nonstop disapproval, all because I didn't stick to the road you laid out for me. Instead, I chose to create and build rather than destroy and manipulate." My hands were trembling, but my voice stayed strong, as if the silence of decades had finally found its voice. Grandfather always taught me that real value isn't in material possessions or in keeping up appearances. It's how you treat others that counts. He saw something in me that you missed because you were too busy sizing me up against your own version of success. The silence that filled the room was almost deafening. I could see the whirl of emotions on their faces: disbelief, shame, confusion, and in some, the stirrings of an uncomfortable awakening. Finally, my dad spoke up. "If this is true, why didn't you ever say anything?" I countered, "Would you have listened, or would you have just found another Watin way to downplay my success?" We all knew the answer to that, and the dinner wrapped up in awkward silence. After everyone else left, Daniela stayed behind and sat next to me. "I always knew you were different," she said softly. "Grandfather told me to keep an eye on you, to learn from you. I didn't get it until now." Our eyes met, full of shared understanding. She added, "There's more to this, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather you haven't mentioned." I nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, everyone will know." The next morning, clarity greeted me as I got up from my modest room near the laundry. As I dressed carefully, choosing an ivory suit I kept for special moments, I knew today would be one for the books. During breakfast, the vibe had shifted. My family eyed me with a mix of curiosity and confusion. The usual jabs were replaced by uneasy silence and stolen glances. Last night's revelation had shaken up the family pecking order, but they didn't have the full picture yet. My mom was the first to break the ice. "Carmen, sweetheart, we had no idea your business was booming," she said with a strained smile. "You should have told us." I kept my voice cool and even. "I tried, Mom, for years. But every time I brought up a new client or a major project, you'd switch the topic to Lucia's accomplishments." My sister turned beet red. "The main thing is that now we know," my dad jumped in, trying out a conciliatory tone he'd never used with me before. "We're proud of you, of course." Roberto, however, stuck to his usual skepticism. $3 million in revenue? That's impressive. If it's true," he added, emphasizing the last part. "Though revenue isn't profit." I wasn't fazed. "Last year, my profit margin was 28% after taxes," I informed him. Surprise flickered across his face, mingled with something almost like respect. At 10:00, Miguel approached our table. "Miss Carmen, everything is ready for the meeting you requested." My family eyed me, puzzled. "I've organized a small presentation on the hotel's history," I explained as I stood. "I thought you might find it interesting, given how important it was to Grandfather." We headed to the main conference room, a refined space with sweeping ocean views. To my surprise, not only was the hotel's management team present, but also an older gentleman I instantly recognized, Arturo Mendez, my grandfather's lawyer. Dad looked alarmed. "What's going on, Carmen?" "Please, take your seats," I directed, motioning to the front row. Once everyone settled, I addressed them. My heart was racing, but my voice remained steady. "Thanks for coming. As you probably know, this hotel was Grandfather Ernesto's crown jewel. He built it up from a tiny inn into one of the coast's premier establishments." I turned on the projector, showing vintage photos of the hotel in its early days. My family watched, a mix of nostalgia and bewilderment on their faces. "What you might not know," I continued, "is what really happened with the hotel after he died." My mom visibly tensed. Grandfather sold the hotel before passing, but we never knew to whom. Mendez stepped in. That's not quite right. Don Ernesto didn't sell the hotel. He put it in a trust. A trust? My dad asked, frowning. Why weren't we told? Because it wasn't relevant to you, Mendez responded coolly. The trust had a single beneficiary. All eyes turned to me, the pieces beginning to fall into place. No way, Lucia muttered. I nodded. Grandfather left me the hotel. I've been the owner for the past 6 months. The room went silent, as if even the air had stopped moving. Faces ranged from disbelief to outrage, through to utter shock. Roberto was the first to find his voice. This is ludicrous. Why would he leave you, of all people, his most treasured possession? Great question, I replied, looking straight at my parents. And I think Mom might have some idea. My mom paled instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. I found your letters, Mom. The ones where you urged Grandfather not to pay me any attention or leave me anything. There were audible gasps. My mom seemed to shrink into her chair. And there's more, I continued, signaling to Miguel, who distributed a folder to each family member. The documents showed that Dad and Roberto tried to pressure Grandfather into selling them the hotel for a bargain price just before he passed. Dad opened his folder with shaking hands to find copies of emails, shady purchasing proposals, and fake appraisals that undervalued the hotel. This is out of context, he stammered. No, it's not, Mendez corrected. Don Ernesto showed me these documents. That's when he decided to change his will, leaving the hotel to Carmen because she was the one he truly trusted to uphold his legacy. Roberto shot up, his face flushed with anger. This is a setup. You manipulated the old man, or the lawyer, or both. You don't have what it takes to manage this place. The results say otherwise, I replied calmly. In the 6 months since I took over, the hotel's revenue has gone up by 18%, customer satisfaction is up, and we've been nominated for 2 hospitality awards. Miguel nodded in agreement, while the management team displayed looks of pride and respect. My mom still looked bewildered. If you're the owner, why did you stay in that awful room? Why let us treat you so poorly? It was the question I had been waiting for. Because I needed to understand, I said, my voice finally cracking with emotion. I needed to see if you truly thought I was worthless, or if somewhere deep down there might be a limit to how low your opinion of me could get. You know, there was this deep-seated reason behind why you always looked at me with such disdain. I felt the tears just well up, but I held myself together. What I found out was more gut-wrenching than I ever thought. It wasn't just that you thought I was worthless, it was because you were scared of what would happen if everyone, especially Grandpa, recognized my worth. My mom couldn't even meet my eyes. She just looked down, probably overwhelmed by the reality. All those old letters made it clear, Mom. You couldn't stand that Grandpa had a soft spot for me. Saw something unique in me. Why? What had I done to earn this resentment? The room fell silent until a stifled sob broke through. It was Mom. She seemed to crumble under the weight of secrets she'd carried for what felt like forever. You reminded me so much of him, she murmured. You looked at the world like he did. He always said you were his spitting image, had his zest for life. She paused to catch her breath, clearly struggling. I was never what he wanted, never smart enough, never driven enough. But you, with your spark and determination, you lit up his world in a way I never could. The truth hit me hard. Years of jealousy and silent competition between us, something I didn't even know was happening. So you decided to dim my shine, I said, a mix of comprehension and sadness in my voice. You made everyone see me as less, convinced them my dreams didn't matter. Mom didn't refute it. She couldn't. I looked over at my dad. And you? You saw an opportunity in sidelining me. It meant I wouldn't mess up your hotel plans. Dad, in those few minutes, seemed to age 10 years. Meanwhile, Lucia stayed quiet, absorbing all this new info about our family like it was a shocking revelation. Finally, I made the biggest decision of my life. Despite everything, I began, breaking the heavy silence that sat over us like a cloud, I'm still part of this family. My words seemed to hang in the air, unexpected and unsettling for everyone around. This isn't about settling scores, I continued. I could have put you through the ringer, kicked you out of the hotel, or given you a taste of your own medicine. but that would just feed into the toxic cycle that's been messing us up for too long. Mom looked at me, eyes red and full of both shame and amazement. When Grandpa left me this hotel, I didn't quite get why. But now I understand it wasn't just about the business, it was about giving us a chance to mend. I walked over to the large window dominating the room, gazing out at the ocean stretching before us, the same view Grandpa had admired every morning from his office. "There's something else in the trust," I said, turning back to them. "A letter meant for the family 6 months after I took charge of the hotel, which is today." Lawyer Mendes nodded and handed me an envelope from his briefcase with a solemn air. "This is Don Ernesto's final wish, beyond the legal stuff," Mendes explained. "He specifically wanted it read in front of the whole family." My hands shook slightly as I opened the envelope, pulling out pages in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting. I began reading aloud. "Dear family, if you're hearing this, it means Carmen has stepped into her role as Hotel Miramar's owner, and it's time you hear my true intentions. This hotel is my legacy. But a legacy isn't just bricks and mortar or business. It's also the values we pass on to future generations. For years, I watched sadly as our family broke apart. I saw the disdain for Carmen, the one who, ironically, is most like me in spirit and vision. Isabel, my dear daughter, always felt she had to prove herself by competing with her daughter. It was unnecessary. I loved her for who she was, not for who she thought she had to be to impress me. Roberto and Lucia built lives around appearances and shallow ambitions. True success isn't about what you own or your status, but about how honestly you live. I left the hotel to Carmen not just because I trusted her business acumen, but because I trusted her heart to mend our family's wounds. My last wish is for you to use this moment to reflect, to recognize past mistakes, and build a future where mutual respect triumphs over contempt, where family ties outweigh individual ambitions. Legally, the hotel belongs to Carmen, but spiritually, it belongs to all of you if you're ready to foster a new family dynamic based on respect and acceptance. With eternal love, Ernesto. When I finished reading, tears shone in many eyes, even among the hotel staff. The silence that followed was thick with emotion and realization, truths that had been ignored for far too long. Mom was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "All this time," she murmured, "all this time competing with my own daughter, trying to prove something to a father who already loved me." She got up slowly and, to my surprise, walked over to me, her voice breaking with emotion. "Carmen, I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I was a terrible mother, blinded by my own insecurities." Her eyes showed something I'd never seen before: genuine acknowledgement, vulnerability, and the start of deep regret. Dad, meanwhile, looked shattered. "Your grandfather was right," he almost whispered to himself. "I spent my life trying to impress others, forgetting what truly matters." Lucia stayed seated, silent, her expression unreadable. Eventually, she stood and approached me. "I never got why Grandpa favored you," she said slowly. "Now I see. While I chased after his approval, you sought his wisdom. While I wanted his money, you valued his legacy." Her voice held no hostility, just a sad acceptance. Roberto, however, seemed unfazed. He stood up abruptly, face flushed with anger. "And I suppose now we should feel guilty, or maybe we're supposed to applaud you for inheriting an empire you didn't build," he snapped, looking at Lucia for support, but she remained beside me. "Roberto," I said calmly, "the hotel is legally mine. That won't change. But how we move forward as a family is up to all of us." Lawyer Mendes cleared his throat discreetly. "Actually, there is an extra clause we haven't addressed yet." We all turned to him, surprised. Don Ernesto stated that at Carmen's discretion, and solely at her discretion, she could allocate minority stakes in the hotel to other family members if they show a commitment to the values he prioritized. This revelation dropped like a bombshell. My family now stared at me with a mix of hope and anxiety. "I'm not looking for servility in exchange for shares," I clarified. What Grandpa wanted was real reconciliation, not one driven by financial gain. "What do you propose, then?" my father asked, sounding genuinely open to discussion for the first time. Taking a deep breath, I knew this was the moment I'd been anticipating, the chance to turn our pain into something positive. "I propose we face the truth. We're a dysfunctional family that's caused real damage to each other. We can't undo the past, but we can decide what our future will look like. I paused, looking each one in the eye. The hotel will remain under my management, but I'm open to forming a family council where everyone has a voice. Not for running the place, but to uphold Grandpa's legacy through charitable work, community support, and the values he held dear. And the shares? Roberto asked, still skeptical. They'll be earned over time, I said firmly. Not through flattering me, but by genuinely living up to what Grandpa stood for. As I stood there, reflecting on my grandfather's wise words, my mom approached me. She was a bit nervous, and after a moment she took my hands in hers. With tears streaming down her face, she confessed, I really don't deserve another chance, but if you're willing to give me one, I'll do everything I can to be the mom I should have been from the start. Her vulnerability brought up tears of my own, tears that had been suppressed for years, longing for the love I missed out on. Softly, I responded, That's all I ever wanted, Mom. My dad soon joined us, followed by Lucia, while Roberto stayed slightly apart, caught between confusion and lingering resentment. I need time to wrap my head around all this, he finally said before heading for the door. Take all the time you need, I assured him. When you're ready, the door's wide open. Once Roberto stepped out, the atmosphere shifted. It was like a weight had been lifted, letting us breathe easier than we had in years. The hotel staff, who had witnessed everything, seemed moved by what they saw. Miguel, ever discreet, signaled that they should leave us to this family moment. With just us and our lawyer Mendes left in the room, Lucia asked, What now? How do we start to mend everything that's been broken? I simply said, with honesty, Grandfather always said family wounds only heal when they're aired out. We've kept ours hidden for way too long. My dad nodded slowly, acknowledging, You've always had his wisdom, Carmen. Mendes then stood up, gathering his stuff, and remarked, Nisa would be proud of how you've handled everything, Carmen. On his way out, he mentioned there was another box of my grandfather's personal documents at his office, hinting I'd find his old diaries from when he built the hotel particularly interesting. After Mendes left, the silence in the room wasn't awkward anymore. It was thoughtful. Suddenly, my mom spoke up. I never asked about your business. 3 million in revenue and 30 employees. You must be great at what you do. I smiled. I am. And one day, I'd love to show you. Her reply was so genuine, I'd really like that. Lucia, being her practical self, interrupted. So what about the rest of the family weekend? Do we just continue as planned? I thought it over and said, I think we should, but we'll make a few changes. For starters, I'm going to take my rightful place in the owner's suite. Dad asked about Roberto, and I replied, Let's give him space. Sometimes it takes a bit longer for people to come around. That evening, as my things were moved to the hotel's main suite, I felt a unique blend of emotions. It was victory, sure, but not the small kind tied to getting even. It was about breaking a toxic cycle. Standing on my suite's terrace, feeling the salty sea breeze my grandfather loved, I whispered, You were right, Grandfather. Real strength isn't about putting down those who hurt us, but offering them a chance to change. I remembered his saying that a hotel is like a family. Every room and guest is unique, and they all should feel valued not despite, but because of their differences. For the first time, it felt like our family could become the kind of hotel Grandfather imagined, a place where everyone could find their spot while still being part of the larger picture. It was going to be a long road, probably a tough one, with some wounds taking years to heal, if they ever fully did. But we took the first step, maybe the most important one, facing the truth without turning away. Fast forward a year since that eye-opening family gathering, and Hotel Miramar is thriving under my leadership, with changes my grandfather would have loved: scholarships for local youths, rooms designed for those with disabilities, and a strong commitment to sustainability. My relationship with my family has transformed in ways I never expected. My mom and I now meet weekly for lunch, slowly rebuilding our bond. She no longer competes with me, but genuinely wants to know me. Sometimes when we're talking about design or business, I see a spark of true maternal pride in her eyes. Lucia was the biggest surprise. She took a step back to reassess her life and values and decided to return to school to study social work. I want to build something meaningful on my own, she told me. Her change has been genuine and profound. My dad found new purpose through the hotel's community program, where he now mentors young entrepreneurs. He says teaching them what he's learned, including his mistakes, gives him a sense of purpose that money and status never did. Roberto took 6 months to speak to me again, and when he did, it was to ask for a job, not a handout. He's now running the hotel's expansion department, where his ambition, when channeled rightly, proves valuable. Room 108, where I first stayed, has been turned into a mini museum showcasing the hotel's story and its founder. Visitors end the tour with my grandfather's letter, framed as a reminder that family businesses are fundamental, untally about values and legacy. Each day, as I walk through the halls of this hotel, which is both my heritage and responsibility, I feel my grandfather's guiding presence. I didn't choose to reveal my secret for revenge, but for the chance of healing it brought. And while the journey has been anything but easy, the family we're building now is more authentic and resilient than the one we pretended to be. As the sign at the entrance of our hotel proudly states, we don't build walls, we build bridges. We don't offer rooms, we offer homes. That's the real magic of Hotel Miramar and the most precious legacy my grandfather left behind. Some stories aren't just tales, they reflect life. If this story touched you, help us keep sharing others that deserve to be heard. Consider joining us and supporting our journey. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.